Welcome to the Sportsline Podcast here on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Nowhere in this country are people like you starving for sports content, especially when it pertains to local athletes, teams, and executives. Now, for a second day in succession, a broadcaster who once hailed here in the Golden Horseshoe that I can happily say has made it in the business. Well, it began some 25 years ago when he replaced myself on the popular local cable TV show Halton Sports Week. Loaded with charisma, character, and a whole lot of sports knowledge, he began behind the scenes learning the ropes at TSN. After getting a huge break at Sun TV, Gareth Wheeler became a household name in the GTA as the host and producer of the Casino Rama Grill Room. Remember that show, folks? Popularity and experience blossomed at TSN Radio in Toronto, and now he's followed his true passion as a soccer fan, calling matches and covering the sport on a national and club level like none other on OneSoccer. I'll tell you, this is something I've been waiting for when I think about what these podcasts, people I've wanted to talk to and catch up with. And Gareth Wheeler, you are certainly one of them. I'm really honored to have you here on the show.
Thanks, pal. And sometimes you say that you have friends in this industry. Bubs, you are by far and away one of my favorite people I've ever met in this industry, and one of the main reasons that I'm still employed and work in this great profession today. If it wasn't for you, Clint Bubba O'Neil, I wouldn't be here today.
Well, I'm
legitimately say that.
I'm honored to say that, and I don't know what I had to do with it, but really, it's been great for me. It's been great to follow your career because you're one of those people that had a passion, right? And I love people that are passionate. I love people that realize that hard work is the only way that can really get you. I mean, people land jobs in this business, and as you know and I know, the people that land in the business generally are out of the business real quick. It's the ones that are passionate and the ones that work hard that will last and continue to do what they love to do. And as both of our parents told us, you know what, find a job and find a career that you really love to do, because it won't be a job. And that's really what's been, I think, the truth, and I think for yourself and myself as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up as a sports fan, and any way possible that you can translate that into a career. I figured out early in my soccer playing days that the infrastructure that we have today was not existent during the 1990s, even the early 2000s. And I just decided that if I can't play the game at the highest level possible, let me talk about it. And fortunately, doors were opened for me to get me that requisite experience. I was willing to grind, work multiple jobs, volunteer, do everything I could to put myself in a position where I can go out and be the best version that I could be. And thankfully, it's afforded me some incredible opportunities over the course of my career, some things that I will never forget. You know, being able to call Canada soccer games, being able to call G League Championship basketball games, all from humble beginnings in the great city of Burlington, Ontario. So it's been a ride, it's been a trip. But yes, you're absolutely right. The work, the hours, the commitment, the time away from family and friends is just all part of the deal. But it's one that we will gladly make to have the experiences that we collectively have.
Well, you said the words that I think just make me giggle, and you said Burlington, Ontario. And, you know, when you think about yourself at M.M. Robinson High School, I mean, was this the plan that you had all charted out? Were you one of those people or you just kind of grew into everything?
Yeah, in one of my early day yearbooks, I think at C.H. Norton Public School in Burlington, Ontario, I had the career that you aspire to be in. I always had sports broadcaster. So it was always a passion of mine. I was raised in a sporting family. I played soccer, basketball, golf, you name it, growing up. And it was just about kind of finding that right path and that right way. And thankfully for myself and so many others, and there's been a lot of great broadcasters that have come from the Golden Horseshoe area, we were afforded the opportunity to watch greats like Steve Foxcroft and Clint Bubba O'Neil on local cable. Halton Sports Week was a show as a high school athlete that me and my friends watched religiously on a weekly basis. You guys breaking down local sports at a time where we didn't really have that connectivity through online groups or communities or chats. You were our vehicle to fall in love with the sport around us and get that competitive edge, that competitive nature all about it, helping us strive to do something better. So that was kind of the pathway into the industry. And guys like you made us believe that we could actually have a chance of doing just that. And that's kind of how we followed along, just volunteering, doing whatever we could to learn the industry, to try to make an impression, make connections, and get better at the job. And that's what it was all about.
When you finally did get into the business, is it fair to say that the Sun TV experience was the one that really snapped it in for you? That really, I mean, your responsibilities as a host and producer, doing a daily show, was that really the one that kind of kicked it in for you?
Yeah, it sure did. I mean, that's I think every young broadcaster's dream. That's a dream gig for anyone in this industry. And I was working for TSN behind the scenes at that time, as well as doing work with CableNet, with Cogeco in Burlington, working on local sports, local news coverage. In fact, Christmas parades, you name it, just trying to put together my demo reel. And one night late after work, I stayed with an editor who was willing to give me some time to put together my demo reel, or update it at that time. And another colleague of mine at the time was looking at my stuff, and we got along, and he liked my work. He ended up moving on a few months later to take a job as the associate producer at Sun TV for the Casino Rama Grill Room. And their host, it didn't work out over the first 8 or 9 months, and they replaced it. Then they held open auditions. And I think it was just a matter of the right place at the right time. That associate producer called me in. I was among the group that auditioned. I was willing to not just host, but get out and produce and do the grunt work, as we had a really small staff, so it required all hands on deck. I probably came at the right price point as well. Someone that was eager and willing to do the work. And it all just worked out. And we had a great run of shows before the channel decided to move into a different direction, from local news to more national political focus. And that just kind of didn't fit where I wanted to be at that time. But we had a great run of that show, so many great memories. And I learned so much, Bubs, about what it took to put on a daily show. I learned how to properly host. I learned how to, I looked at my early days being on air there. I'm like, I was awful. I was so bad. But then you grow over time, and you find your voice as a host, and then everything seemingly kind of took off from there. So that was absolutely the definitive moment. And really, to this point, probably the most fun that I've had over the entirety of my career thus far.
And I think the best part for me, and when I look at your career, and I remember you sitting there with Foxcroft doing, Halton Sports Week, and you had always expressed a love for soccer. And that was one of the banters that you guys always, because he had no time for soccer. He hated soccer, and you guys would go back and forth. Yet, it would come full circle that after you left Sun TV, your love for soccer blossomed into many things at TSN and OneSoccer, and to what you're doing today.
Yeah, at some point, I think we all in our careers need to make a choice. Where do I want to focus on? And I wanted to kind of focus on my real number one passion, which is the game of soccer. I grew up playing it in this country at a high level. I won a national championship at Western University. So I had some pedigree and knowledge about the sport, but there was this huge gap in terms of a lack of professionalism, a lack of coverage around the sport in this country. I volunteered for TSN while I started working there, writing a weekly column. They allowed me to write on tsn.ca. It didn't pay me anything, but it was an opportunity to start writing. And then when I moved over to Sun TV, that was at the exact same time that Toronto FC came into existence. And the Toronto Sun didn't really have anyone to write or cover the game for them. And I put up my hand proudly to do that. And thankfully, they gave me an opportunity to freelance, and that turned into a more full-time gig covering Toronto FC and the national team. So I brought that to TSN Radio with me, and the fact that we had great events, not only Toronto FC football, but we covered the Premier League, we covered the 2015 World Cup. I hosted the radio coverage for every World Cup and European Championship while I was at that station. And those were marathons, hosting national radio coverage for these massive sporting events. Which again, just kind of ingratiated myself into the game at a bigger level. So I've been covering the game for a long time. And then thankfully that opportunity afforded itself with the launch of OneSoccer in the Canadian Premier League back in 2019. And that was the one time where a company came in and was willing to put their flag in the ground and try to invest in the game of soccer with full-time commitment, one channel whose sole purpose was to cover soccer, Canadian soccer in this country. And thankfully, I've been there ever since. And thankfully, once again, the game has continued to grow in this country with great ownerships like the one at Forge right now, and individuals and groups in this country that are now willing to invest in the game in this country. And through that time, we've seen the rise of both the Canadian men's and women's national teams rise to great prominence, not without distraction in politics and disruption over the course of the way. But finally, there's a sense that we're moving in the right direction in actually working as a broadcaster in soccer in this country. There's an opportunity to do that. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity. And I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We're just at the beginning of what it can actually become. And that's what the most exciting part of it all really is.
Well, and I think there was such a conversation that went on for decades, actually, that soccer will never become big in Canada unless it had a grassroots system. And the Canadian Premier League, I mean, a lot of people took a lot of chances, but here we are rolling into yet another year. And I mean, you've watched it. I mean, you called the very first game, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Are you surprised at the way it's really taken off? Not just in certain centers, because we know that soccer's big in certain centers, but really it's growing, and that this is a Canadian league that people really do appreciate and are showing up for.
The answer to that would be yes or no. There's a little bit of a field of dreams element to it. If you build it, they will come. And that certainly has played out in markets like Hamilton and Halifax and Ottawa and Calgary. I mean, the fandom and the collective community building through the sport is something that I always tried to tell people that it would happen or make my feelings heard. And now it's seeing come to life. It's kind of like, yeah, I told you so. But the economics of the game in this country is a little bit different. Like, I grew up watching the Hamilton Steelers and Brian Timmins Stadium in the shadows of the old Ivor Wynne Stadium in Hamilton, and the CSL and various different versions didn't work out. And that's because three things I point to in this country that make putting together a national Canadian soccer that makes it a massive challenge. One, our climate. Our weather stinks because everything needs to be truncated in a very short period of time. The other is geography. We're a massive country. Travel, it's expensive. Getting from one place to another in an affordable way it makes it very difficult. And thirdly is the economics of the game. The game itself isn't expensive to play, but building facilities is, and we still don't have enough facilities in this country, as well as corporate commitment. You know, every single federation in this country struggles in terms of what their finances, what their budgets look like, with the exception of maybe Hockey Canada. So Canada Soccer isn't immune to that. So there's all sorts of obstacles. What I'm so impressed about how resolute this Canadian Premier League group is that not only are they launching an ambitious league, but then COVID hit right after, where everything's turned upside down. So they've had to fight through these obstacles. But I mean, anyone that watched that final at Tim Hortons Field last year, where Forge dramatically ended up winning 2-1 after extra time, the goals, the drama, the crowd, is all the ingredients to continue to grow even bigger and better. The players on the field, the coaches, everyone's done a phenomenal job thus far. We have 8 teams. I'd like to see it built out to 12, 14, 16. I do think we can get there relatively soon, but just a little bit of patience needs to be preached. But so far, so good. I'm really optimistic about everything to do with this league.
You know, that's hilarious that you brought up the final from last year, and here we are in the media booth. And as you well know, we're supposed to be impartial, right? and you know, and when we see a overtime Olympico, like, are you kidding me? Like, how could I not cheer in the? You know what I mean? It was such an exciting final, and of course, to see what Forge FC have done over the years. What is it about Forge? I mean, this is what 4 championships. They continue, even years when I sit there and they say, well, you know what, that roster is starting to get a little ragged or a little old, or they really haven't changed much. But yet Bobby turns his screws and they continue to win. What is it about that program that you think that maintains their ability to win?
I always say off-field competence or success leads to on-field success. And the way that entire ownership group has laid out this project, have put proper people in place across the entire organization, that leads to success. And they got it right from day one, bringing in the right manager in Bobby Smirniotis, another Canadian coach looking for an opportunity to show how good he can be. And we have a lot of them in this country, and oftentimes haven't been given the opportunity because of their passport, more so than anything else. Bobby Smirniotis is beloved. He is connected. He knows his stuff. He can be coaching at the highest of levels. And the fact that he remains with Forge in the Canadian Premier League, it's something that we should all celebrate, because managers like him just don't come around every day. He gets the best out of his players. They change the way that they played every year. And having kind of those staple players in the team, the Kyle Beckers of this world, being able to have them commit to the club long-term, providing that continuity, and setting the standards really within the club, makes them a perennial contender. It's funny, I look around the Canadian Premier League and different clubs are signing different players. I'm just like, Forge will still be the favorite going into next season. It's like you play out the schedule, you play 90 minutes of football, Forge wins. That's how it's played out. A lot to celebrate in the city of Hamilton, and with good reason.
You know, let's change the focus a little bit here, because a question came up on our Sportsline Square Off recently that, you know, the PWHL, they are setting records in United States in terms of watching women's hockey. They're setting records here in Canada. They're about to break probably another record when Toronto plays Montreal. Can that success for women's sports and women's hockey be translated to the Canadian Women's Soccer League, which is, I guess Diana Matheson's trying to get off in about 2025? Do you see that league being as successful, or at least trying to mirror what the success is of that hockey league?
Perhaps it's not like for like, though. I mean, because the PWHL is Canadian and American teams in this league, and making sure that they can find markets where the league will inevitably be successful. Also in women's hockey, I mean, the PWHL, correct me if I'm wrong, Bubs, these are some of the best hockey players in the world. The couple challenges that Project 8 will and are facing right now, one is in terms of infrastructure. Well, there's rinks across this country. There isn't ready-made facilities for professional soccer in terms of being able to broadcast those games as well. And the broadcast industry, as much as it continues to struggle in this country, who's going to broadcast and for what cost, and how much is the corporate community willing to pay in? Also, there are multiple competing women's soccer leagues worldwide. The English League, the WSL, is of the highest standard now. The women's league in Spain is excellent. France is excellent. Not to mention the NWSL in the United States. And next year, the USL, another American league, is launching as well. And there's a Mexican league as well. So there's only so many players that can play at the highest of levels. I'm just wondering what that quality, where these players are going to come from, and what's that going to look like. I'm not a naysayer. I'm not saying that it can't happen. I just think that there needs to be a lot of cooperation across all entities across this country in order to make it work. Everyone, including myself, we all want to see women's soccer thrive in this country, but it needs to be set up for success on day one. It can't be the scenario where, past women's hockey leagues have folded and come back and folded and come back. There needs to be a real commitment, some real financial backing here in order to see this process play out. Again, I'm optimistic that it will happen. Will it happen by next year? The clock is ticking. Time is running out, so that remains to be seen how quickly this can, really get up and running.
Gareth, so much positivity, I think, for the sport of soccer across this country right now. A World Cup on the way. What's happened, as we say in the CPL, I got to bring this up. I think there are question marks about Canada Soccer. I know the CEO, Kevin Blue, just recently hired. I don't know anything about him. Perhaps you could shed a light on what he might bring to the table. But I don't know. Like, there's just seemingly a lot of noise because we have these national teams that really have made their mark, probably the best generation of national teams we've seen in our lifetime. Yet there's always this cloud. Even the Christine Sinclair, sending off, there was still this cloud of negativity about the organization. Can this change? Is this something that is going to change? Are the right people in place the way you see it?
All great questions. All very good questions. And this, although the problems have become magnified and become bigger as success has finally come to these national teams over recent years, an Olympic gold medal for the women and World Cup qualification for the men. This is something that's plagued Canadian soccer my entire lifetime. Just an association that has struggled to find willing partners to cooperate in order to try to pursue one consistent vision. The Canadian Soccer Association is historically and continues to be underfunded, under-resourced, a lack of talent within these organizations. That's always been the biggest problem, is that they haven't had enough. They haven't had enough money. They haven't had enough commitment. They haven't had enough agreement across all the stakeholders in this country. We need to remember that Canada Soccer is more than just the national teams. This is all the provinces, all the local clubs, the referees. There are a lot of people who are partners in this, and there is a lot of, mouths to be fed. To be fed, just in terms of people that require funding in order to continue to take the game forward in this country. A lot of the noise that has happened over the last couple of years has been extremely ugly. And I don't agree with a lot of what is being done. I think universally there was an acknowledgement that change had to come to the Canadian Soccer Association. It need to be bigger, more robust, better. But individuals who have decided that the nuclear route, blowing it all up, was the way to go. I think that it was just the wrong approach. I don't agree with that whatsoever, and that's what's happened. Bombs have continued to be dropped, like just in terms of stories, dysfunction, partisanship, politics, when it comes to Canadian soccer, and I just don't think it works in the best interest of anyone whatsoever. Finally, we're at a time where looks like sponsors want to come on board and start backing what's going on in this country for the first time that I can remember. But now, based upon some of the stories that are being written, they're like, what is going on here? Like, there's no need to air your dirty laundry in this kind of way. There's going to be disagreement. Not everyone's going to be aligned in terms of the way that things are going to be done. But we are finally at a point where groups and individuals are willing to invest in clubs and professional infrastructure to take this game forward. And I just don't understand why trying to undermine the work that's being done right now. I just don't see how that's the way forward, Bubs. I don't get it. Like, I'm also of the mindset, I'm not sure where you stand on this, like, playing for your country is the greatest honor. Like, I don't think that players should be trying to get rich off playing for their country in international competition. There's natural prestige that comes along with it, sponsorship opportunity for both the individual and the collective. It's also about paying it forward so the next generation to come, has it better off than the generation that's just gone through. I think we've lost sight of that to a certain degree. But certainly, all parties are guilty here. The Canadian Soccer Association is guilty of it too. I think the players, some of them, not all of them, some of them just haven't acted in the best way possible. I think that everyone's heart, most people involved, their heart is in the right place, but the way that it's manifesting itself in the media, where one side of the story is being told and maybe not the other, it's just not the way to do things. So again, I'm trying to be an optimist about this, that people actually legitimately care. And now the pressure's on people like Kevin Blue. Like, I look at the new General Secretary of the Canadian Soccer Association, Bubs, and never mind the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs or anything else. This is the most difficult job in Canadian sport, because he needs to come up with new modes of revenue. He needs to bring the provinces together. He needs to come up with a new CBA that aligns both the Canadian men's national team with the women's national team. He needs to invest in referees. He needs to support a new women's league that needs to be built. They need to hire a new men's national team head coach. They need to make sure that youth teams are properly funded. Like, this job is so difficult. And the political element, I think, is the most difficult of it all. So he has one heck of a job ahead of him. I think he's doing the right thing. He's being transparent out of the gate, trying to speak to as many people as he can. But he comes from outside the soccer world. Anyone inside the Canadian soccer ecosystem knows how difficult it is. So I wish him the best of luck, and fingers crossed he builds a team around him that's able to support him and start bringing some real togetherness, some real true community when it comes to the Canadian game. That's the hope at the very least.
You know, and I have to continue this conversation and what's going on. And look, I don't want to get you fired or anything, but what's going on with OneSoccer? Like, I mean, this has been, I have continued to say this, that having the OneSoccer, you know what? Yeah, I'll put down my $12 a month or whatever to see soccer at the highest level, to get excellent commentary on a daily basis, the way you guys present the sport, individually focused on national teams, setting me up for games, giving me post-game analysis at the highest level, getting interviews, inside information. I love what OneSoccer has done, but now hearing that there's some issues with the Canada Soccer and like what is going on there too? I mean, when that story blew up, I was shocked. I thought everyone was in stock union together.
There's obviously only so much I can say right now. My belief is that a dedicated platform for Canadian soccer fans isn't going anywhere. That's my fundamental belief when it comes to it all. We have OneSoccer are still producing content in games, including having the critical Canada-Trinidad and Tobago game this Saturday. Where if Canada beats Trinidad and Tobago, they'll qualify for Copa America and play the world champions Argentina in the first game of that competition. So no one said the growth of Canadian soccer broadcast would move forward in a linear way. There's obviously going to be things that happen along the way, but I am very confident that Canadian soccer fans will still get the coverage that they deserve and they demand moving forward.
Thank you for that there. Hey, now you said something about a World Cup. Like, I mean, again, let's go back to baby Gareth. Did you ever think that there would be a time where the World Cup and World Cup matches would be played in this country, and not even in this country, in Toronto? Such an exciting time.
It's amazing. It's a little bit unorthodox, if we're going to be honest, because it's not only being hosted within Canada, it's also the United States and Mexico. And this is a new reality with an expanded World Cup in terms of teams as well. It's going to be a World Cup literally like no other. Like what we saw in Qatar, where you could essentially stay in Doha and you can go see 2 or 3 games in a day. It's going to be impossible here because games are in Toronto and Vancouver and Monterrey and Los Angeles. So it's going to be quite the onus that it puts on traveling supporters to go out and follow a World Cup. What it means in the city of Toronto, that is something special. Like those 6 games, I believe it's 6 games within the city, having been at World Cups and being in host cities, there's a vibe, there's an energy. I remember waking up in Johannesburg the morning of the first game of the 2010 World Cup, and the vuvuzelas waking me up. Like you could hear them across the city. And it's that sort of tangible excitement. I don't know what the instrument of choice will be here in Toronto for those games, but I mean, it'll provide a wonderful opportunity. I'm interested to see what tickets prices will be and how much access Canadian fans will actually have to those games. That's obviously my one big concern. My other concern is that we might not fully be able to take advantage of what this event means. Like this should mean, for me, I know that everything's expensive, but this is the time to expand BMO Field, bring it up to speed, bring it up to date, really make it a true world-class facility. It's a good soccer stadium. Is it a world-class facility? Absolutely not. My hope through this was that more dollars would be allocated towards that. Doesn't seem like that's the case, as nothing is being done for like 2 years out from that World Cup. So it's a little bit different. I'm a little bit old school. if a World Cup's in Germany, the entire country feels it. Now we have two markets. I'm not sure how much the entire country is going to experience it, although the entire country can benefit from it in terms of Canadian soccer. So let's hope there's some tangible benefit there as well.
Well, I've been talking to some friends in Montreal who are all of a sudden very, very jealous that games are not being played in that city. And, of course, as the games being, as you said, being played in Vancouver as well. You know, I would be remiss if I did not bring this point up. Now, all of a sudden, I know you've been pouting all season long about what's going on in the English Premier League, but that win over Liverpool.
You had to go there.
Yeah, that win over Liverpool, though, like, didn't that almost make up for your entire season? One step away from an FA Cup.
I am in this crazy sports pool with a group of buddies. Bubs, you'd love it. It's auction style, 4 drafts over the course of the year, including all sports like NHL, F1, MLB, and we have Champions League as a category. And United goes into a group this year with Galatasaray and Copenhagen and Bayern Munich. I'm like, they're getting into that group. You're allocated points the deeper your team goes. And the fact that we flopped to the Champions League didn't just hurt my feelings as a diehard Manchester United supporter, but I had vested interest in the team as well. So it was a double blow, a double whammy, and things went off the rails early. Look, like, Manchester United has brought me more joy in the first 3 decades of my life than anything I could imagine. The last decade, though, Bubs, it has been a struggle. Our team has either been bad or has played bad football. And I think finally we have this ray of light that the ownership is changing and maybe things will be done a little bit of a different way. Yes, Sunday was phenomenal. St. Patrick's Day victory over our biggest rival, Liverpool, in a real fashion where you're like, that's what we're all about. Yes, it was a great day, but I can't forget what I've been through for way too long. It cuts deep, my friend. It cuts deep. It's like I'm a Toronto guy. I love all Toronto teams and Golden Horseshoe teams and Hamilton. But my 2 biggest loves are Manchester United and the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, those are my 2 teams. So,
well, the Eagles, I don't even want to go there. We had Port Wando on the show. I mean, he's a huge Eagles fan too, and he didn't want to talk about it. Does it drive you even crazy that what's going on in Manchester is being dominated for years now by the guys in blue?
Of course. And all we have to lean on is say 115, because 115 sanctions against Manchester City that haven't been legislated yet. Like, they were kicked out of the Champions League for abusing the financial system, and then they appealed and they were let back in. They won it. Then they won in trouble.
Case. Come on.
Look, they're a brilliant footballing side to watch, but how they got there, that's something that requires more investigation. I'll leave it at that. And at the same time, like, I can accept a small club by relative standards and Manchester City winning. When Liverpool wins, it's far worse. It's far worse. Trust me, as a United supporter, like City, you don't like. Liverpool, they are a true one major rival because Liverpool is a club that matters. They have historical relevance. They have fans, an incredible number of fans worldwide. They are Manchester United's true rival, not City.
Well, I'll tell you, the thing, this whole Jurgen Klopp farewell tour, there really is something to it because I don't know how they're winning these matches with sort of the beat up lineups. They have so many injuries, but no Salah at times, and yet they continue to win. But I think the chase for the EPL, that three team chase there with Arsenal included there too, that's certainly going to be exciting right down for the final months here. One last thing here we haven't discussed here is that not only does your love in sports center around the sport of soccer, but for many, many years you've been a participant. You've watched the growth of the 905 when I talk about basketball with the Raptors. And what's your outlook there? I mean, I know it's tough times for Raptors. We got so spoiled with that championship and knocking on the door for about a decade, finally break through with a title. And it's kind of lean years right now. And, but do you think that there's hope there?
Hope. Let's take it back first. Those 5 years with the 905 that I spent there were incredible because you saw the process play out, like what the Raptors were committing to. drafting and developing, and not even drafting, signing and developing when it came to Fred VanVleet. Like watching Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet and getting a front row seat to that team and what they became, and the coaches as well, by the way, through that system, what they were able to accomplish winning a G League title. It was amazing to watch because it foreshadowed what was to come with the Raptors at the NBA level. And they just built brick by brick to get to the point where they could go on and compete for an NBA title. Was it fortuitous? Yes. When you lose Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant and the injuries that Golden State suffered, that was part of the story, but nonetheless, the Raptors earned it. Like that playoff run is something that, honestly, Bubs, as a huge basketball guy, I will never forget. That was unbelievable. That's why I can't believe we're at the point where we are today. I don't know if it was complacency. It seemed like the team was reluctant to make the big decision when they needed to, and then they put themselves in a position. I watched that game, a game last week. Don't ask me why. I watched the end of the Detroit Pistons and the Toronto Raptors last week. It was, I'd call it unwatchable, but I watched it. Like, I couldn't believe how low the standards have dropped. So there's significant work. There needs to be a refocus from Masai Ujiri and company to get this back on track. Another thing that I think that needs to be said is when the team is this bad, the fans continue to show up. They are incredible, especially at the price point of tickets. Like, it's always been a story for Toronto sports fans, but the ticket prices that Raptors fans are being asked to pay to watch this product doesn't make any sense for me.
It's like Maple Leaf. It's like Maple Leaf now. There's no Sprite Zone anymore.
Yeah, and I'm someone that's being vocal about ticket prices for Maple Leaf fans. Like, true sports fans are the blue-collar people that are invested in this team as much as they can on a regular basis. If teams in European football, and I come from a soccer background, if fans were asked to pay prices like these, there'd be riots on the street. But we accept it here. I'm not quite sure why we've allowed this to happen. It's not just here. I'm not picking on MLSE. Like, they're a well-run organization. There's great people there. But in North America in general, in certain markets and certain teams, the price points are just at a place where your real fans really can't get into the building. And it was funny. I was talking to someone about Maple Leafs playoff hockey just a couple of days ago. Actually, it was a former Maple Leafs player. And I said, I'm not against the ticket prices being high, but what I would love to piggyback off soccer is find a way to make that building much more difficult to come in and play in. Like, why isn't there a supporter section where you have your hardest core fans drumming up the crowd, creating an atmosphere where they're going to make it difficult for their opponent? Like, it's something that's oftentimes not talked about in terms of maybe the lack of playoff success for a team like the Maple Leafs, is that, you know, the Scotiabank Arena or Air Canada Center, whatever you want to call it, it's not a scary place to go into and play. It's just, and that intimidation, that atmosphere, you know this, Bubs, like, being the sports guy, you're like, it matters. It sure matters. Does. You want to create that atmosphere, and until they get that right, no matter what you spend or who you have on your team, you're going to be missing at least an ingredient. So I just wish there was a way for more of those types of fans to get into the building in order to support their team.
Well, I mean, you hear it just down the road in Buffalo, the Bills Mafia, and like you look at visiting teams, and they, you know, it's 3rd down and 7, and you see the quarterback, and they can't communicate, and that is that 13th or I guess we say 12th man in the NFL, 13th man in the CFL, and you know, and we do see it right here in Hamilton at times where the fans are so into it. Labor Day, I mean, you just show up to a game and see how difficult it is for the Argos to operate on offense or defense because no one can hear, and the atmosphere is there, and there is something to be said about people. I guess you can really say the real fans, not the corporate fans, and you do need the corporate, right? Like, let's be honest. I mean, the salaries are at a place right now where we never thought they would ever be. So you do need the corporate. But yeah, there is something about, and even watching on television, you would say this to be true, that watching a game on TV with rabid fans, that makes us that translate onto the television as well too.
Of course. It's just all part of the way that you want to present your product. Like, look, in North American sport, with playoffs, it's very difficult to sell 82, 162 games, whatever it is. Football is a little bit different, right? Because over the course of the CFL, NFL season, every game matters. Like, every game matters. You can't take your foot off the gas just by the nature of the sport. So I'd like to see something done. This is just, again, I don't think anyone's going to be listening to Gareth Wheeler for these tips, but I do think that there's something there and something missing. And with the Raptors, they have such a great fan base. You know, we've experienced it, you know, what it means to be a basketball fan in this city and in this country. And the team is just so far off right now. And you're just wondering how they're going to crawl back. And I just think that kind of reevaluating everything at a time like this makes a whole lot of sense.
You know, Gareth, you get the standing ovation from me. And this has been something, like I said off the top, when we started this Sportsline podcast, I was like, I got to have Wheels on, and I can't wait to catch up with him. Really honored and pleased, and thank you so much for joining us. And, you know, it's been great to see that you've done well. It's been fun to see. I don't just blow you up when I say that. And the fact that you're getting to cover the sport that you love so much means a lot to me. So, again, thank you so much for joining us. There are a lot of fans. I can't wait till you get into the Burlington Sports Hall of Fame. Eric Smith is in there. Eric Smitty's in there. So you got to be in there. So we really congratulate you on all that you've accomplished, my friend.
I honestly, like, I still, you know, I've lived in Toronto for a number of years now. I still call Burlington home. I was born in Hamilton. My grandmother, when she moved to this country, when she was a young girl, lived in the shadows of Iverwin Stadium. Like, this is where my family's roots are in the Burlington Hamilton area. And you know, I still have great friends there. I still love the area, and who knows, maybe one day I'll be back on a more full-time basis in that area as well. But I want to thank you as well for everything that you do, Bubs, for local sports. You're a true ambassador of everything that's good in local sports in this area. CH is lucky to have you. And anytime you want me to come on and just shoot the breeze, I'm all yours, pal. I'm indebted to you. So thank you, and keep up the great work.
Got your number, homeboy. All right. Take care, my man. Well, folks, as you've just seen and heard, we do love talking sports with people who are making a difference on the local, provincial, and national scene. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast do want you. Contact me on many of CHCH's social media platforms, and hey, let's have a chat. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button, because we do appreciate your feedback. For the wonderful minds and hands that make this podcast possible, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.